The BRICS summit, which brought over a dozen world leaders to Russia, has come to an end. The meeting, which was supposed to show the West that it did not manage to isolate Russia over its war in Ukraine, seems to have backfired. To discuss the aftermath of the summit and its possible outcomes, I'm joined by Daniel Hamilton, president of the Transatlantic Leadership Network. Good evening and welcome to the program.
Good evening. Good to be with you.
The BRICS summit, as we're looking at it now, we're looking back at the past 2 days. We know that Russia claims it's proven that the West failed to isolate it over the war in Ukraine. In your opinion, was it a hit or a miss?
Oh, I think it's a miss. I think it's important that for Putin to show that world leaders will come and meet with him, even though he's indicted and he should be arrested. But if he stays in Russia, of course, that doesn't happen. But otherwise, all of his goals, I don't think he got many goals. I don't think the summit itself, if you read the declaration, really achieved much of anything. More important were the meetings on the sidelines. Your reporting just noted the North Korea-Russia arrangements that are, I think, concerning to us. India and China agreed to settle, or at least lower the temperature on their own border disputes. That is potentially significant because India and China are the main countries in the BRICS that are really at loggerheads with each other. So, and the fact that Turkey's president showed up, Turkey, a NATO member, showed up at the BRICS, and actually he wants to have Turkey join the BRICS, that's, I think, somewhat troubling. But there were no real results of the meeting, and I think that shows that this is sort of just a posturing and the group doesn't usually produce much.
One of the main discussions during the BRICS summit focused on, so to speak, dethroning the American dollar. And we heard from Vladimir Putin, who said that the U.S. is using its currency as a political weapon. And he basically announced that he would be interested in establishing an alternative to dollar-based international payment system. Is such a global financial revolution possible?
I don't think so. If you look at the role of the dollar today, it's just as robust as it's been for decades. The only other currencies that people use in the world are the euro, or the Swiss franc, or the Japanese yen, or the British pound. The Chinese currency is not convertible, so it can't be an alternative until China would make it convertible on world markets, which would open up its system to an extent that would challenge the Communist Party's rule. The ruble is really, kind of a joke. And there was no support even among the BRIC leaders for Putin's idea. That idea has been around for a long time. At every BRICS meeting, they talk about this, but nothing ever comes of it.
How feasible do you think it is to actually formalize BRICS institutionally, to be able to create a proper trading bloc with a different currency?
It's not really. These countries really have not much in common. You have democracies like India, and then you have autocracies like Russia and China. And as I say, many of them have real problems with each other. So they don't really do much with each other. The main trading partners of almost all of those countries are actually the United States and Europe. So I really don't see much coming of this. It's really a posturing, trying to portray this notion of the so-called multipolar world as sort of an alternative to the Western alliance. But you see, it doesn't come anything. Take Ukraine, for instance. They couldn't agree at all on anything on Ukraine, and they never have, because there's just no common ground.
In his declaration, the BRICS expressed their commitment to the established order of the purpose and principles enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations. With Russia's aggression of Ukraine and with all these leaders accepting the invitation to Kazan, hybrid warfare, imperialistic tendencies, and these countries entering this summit, who are they actually trying to fool by saying that they support the established order by the UN?
Well, you'd have to ask them. I don't, we all agree, I think, on the principles of the United Nations. This is how some countries implement them, where we, of course, disagree, including Russia's aggression against Ukraine, which is a clear violation of the UN Charter and its basic principles. So some of this, just as we would say in the United States, doesn't pass the laugh test. They really, these statements really are hollow. They don't really mean a whole lot. So I wouldn't put much stock in it. I think, as I said, what's more important is what happened on the margin, some bilateral arrangements that went forward. It's also important to think about who isn't there. I noticed on the map you showed earlier in your show, you show Argentina as part of the BRICS, but Argentina has said it doesn't want to be part of the BRICS. You take a country like Indonesia, which has decided not to join the BRICS. They want to join the OECD, the Western Economic Club. So you have a country like Indonesia and Argentina. They're not fooled by this. Because essentially the BRICS is going to be a China club. The fact that Putin was hosting it is fine, but really it's about China and its weight and a group of countries that would be aligned with China. India is the main country blocking that at the moment. Brazil also not totally thrilled about that idea. So if you see the BRICS moving toward more Chinese orientation, then I think that's something to worry about. But at the moment, Russia has become a client of China. It's a junior partner and now becoming increasingly dependent on China. And the BRICS framework just camouflages that. And I don't think they produce anything.
One of the big surprises was the appearance of Antonio Gutterz, the UN Secretary General. It was widely criticized, especially when it comes to Kyiv. As they said, I quote, "Accepting an invitation from a war criminal is exactly what he did. Russia does not keep up with UN's rules." What was Gutterz actually trying to achieve by calling for peace and attending the summit?
Well, again, it's hard to know what he was trying to achieve. I would imagine the UN Secretary General wants to be seen as, working on peace negotiations. There was both the Middle East issues and the war against Ukraine, and he appeared there. But again, I agree with the comment that to take an invitation from an indicted alleged war criminal, which has to go through the UN-related process, is really kind of a contravention of the UN's own principles. So I understand his outreach for peace, but he knows the BRICS summit will never achieve anything on Ukraine. So I think it was a mistake for him to go.
And finally, last but not least, considering the meeting of Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk and then Ursula von der Leyen with Mr. Vučić and his absence during BRICS, where he sent his representatives who are on the American list of sanctions, do you think that there's a chance that Serbia might be actually getting closer to the EU rather than Russia?
I think Serbia plays the game. It's a hedger. It hedges its bets. It tries to it doesn't fall for one camp or the other. It's trying to extract maximum advantage for itself. I think what you've seen in recent years, the United States and the European Union have tried to pull Serbia away from its associations with China and Russia. And they now see Serbia as the key to sort of stabilizing the whole Balkans. Of course, that was very different years ago. But Vučić is playing, a game. He's hoping to get a huge amount of EU money because that's what's really at stake for him. He sent some ministers to the BRICS meeting, so he's playing that. He toys with China. China, as you know, there was a major meeting of Chinese and Vučić some months ago. So he's trying to do what he can. It's just like the other countries I mentioned in the BRICS. They're all trying to, be unaligned, because that maximizes their maneuvering room, they believe. They don't want to be locked into one camp or the other. And I think we all in the West, we need to pay attention to those countries and engage more with them and work with them to see the advantages they could have of working with the United States, with the EU, with NATO, some of them, and be part of the global, financial architecture, the global trading system, because their main key economic partners are going to be Europe and the United States, not each other.
Diplomacy and international relations, always the name of the game. Daniel Hamilton, the president of Transatlantic Leadership Network, thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you.
And so this would be all the latest news for now here on World News Tonight, but please stay with us here on TVP World for more news and features, as we'll be back with you very soon.